Well, welcome to iSet 495, the at-home edition. I know in our other video about electricity I talked about the Candy Safe, but I actually went ahead and made one so that you could see how that could be done, and I thought that would be a little better explanation. But before I get to that, I want to talk to you about some of the basics of doing this and some things that go into it. Looking back on some of the reflections, a couple of you had questions about the cost of doing something like this and also about the safety of it, so I will also talk about that. This particular activity uses electricity from chemical energy because we're using a battery, as you already know, but the way we generate most of our electricity in the United States is by using magnetism. And whenever you are generating electricity by spinning a coil of wire inside a magnetic field, that's magnetism. So that would cover nuclear energy, energy from coal, energy from natural gas, hydroelectric energy. All of those, we're spinning a magnetic coil inside, we're spinning a coil of wire inside a magnetic field, and that causes current to flow. So that is electricity from magnetism, and I just wanted to point that out. Safety. This is really a very safe activity. The biggest dangers you're going to encounter would be maybe sticking your finger on a piece of the wire and poking it. That doesn't happen very often. I've had some of my students that like to lick the end of the battery. It's going to give them a little bit of a shock. That's sometimes the way they test the battery. I always like to test the battery by just putting it on the motor, and you can kind of tell from the sound of the motor whether your battery is any good or not. Occasionally, if students don't wire something up correctly, and that's especially true if you're using AA batteries, then sometimes you can get it in a loop and it'll overheat the batteries, but it's probably not going to cause a fire. You'll be able to feel it. You know, the battery sometimes will get a little bit warm. That's okay, but if it gets hot, then you've got a problem, so you'd want to stop and figure out what's going on. But it's not likely to start a fire. You're going to smell it or feel it and know that something is wrong before it gets to that point. The cost of all of this, I ran some prices, and at Walmart, depending on which brand name battery you can get, you can buy a 4-pack. The prices vary, but you can buy a AA battery from anywhere from, a 9-volt battery from anywhere from $2.50 to $4, and they will last you, if you're doing things like this, pretty much the whole year. The wire I have gotten free. I've never really had to pay for any of the wire I've used at school, but I did price some and on Amazon, and you can get 5 spools of wire that have 33 feet of wire on them. And you get the 5 spools for about $15 or $16. So the wire is not all that expensive. I want to talk a minute just about the wire. I mentioned in the other video about the difference between solid and stranded wire. And as you can see, this is just one piece of wire right here. And it's fairly stiff, but it will work. But eventually, again, if you bend it back and forth enough times, it will break. The wire that I've used at school comes from something like this, and it's called coaxial cable. And I found a big spool of this laying on the floor one day when they were rewiring our communication cables at school for computer stuff. And I asked them, I said, "What are y'all going to do with that?" And they said, "Well, we don't want it, we're just going to throw it away." So I grabbed a bunch of it, and again, it looks like this, and what you have to do is you have to split off. I just took an X-Acto knife, and you cut off this outer layer, and then inside you have all these different wires. And in this case, there are 6 individual wires inside of it. And then you can just use wire strippers. And this is the kind of wire strippers I like for this kind of work. This is what we had in class at JMU. And see, it's very simple. This is stranded wire, solid wire, and this is copper. This is aluminum. This is also stranded wire, and again, it's aluminum. One of them works just as well as the other one. Here's another type of coaxial cable. You can see there were a lot more wires in here, but they're much smaller, so there's not as many individual strands that come out of here. I haven't used this too much. It should work, but I like this wire a little bit better because it's a little sturdier, and I think it would hold up better for what you want to do. The buzzers that we were going to use at JMU, I found those also on Amazon, and it was a combination buzzer and battery connector, and they sold those in a set of 10 for $9. So you could get those for about 99 cents each. The motors I get from a company called Kelvin, and they run about 70 cents. Of course, I'm just using this cardboard box that I stole out of our Christmas boxes up in the attic. But Hobby Lobby and Michaels has wooden boxes that you can use that cost about $1. And I would recommend those because they're going to hold up a lot better and you can use them year after year. Of course, the candy that we're going to use, the candy varies from brand to brand depending on what you want to get. $6 up to $8 or $9 a bag. And then some aluminum foil like what we have back here. So that takes care of the cost of this. One thing about differentiating this a little bit, if you want to hide the alarm system, you could have your students do that, and it would be more difficult to do. When we do it in class, we weren't really interested in that. We just wanted you to learn how to do the circuit and the switch. So we didn't make you hide this, but if you required it to be concealed, that would make it a little more difficult. And so that's one way you can differentiate it. So what you want to do is you want to wire a switch up such that when you open the lid, either a light bulb lights up or a buzzer goes off. I didn't have any buzzers here. I didn't have any at school, and I wasn't allowed to get back in the building at JMU to get any. So I'm just using this motor because it gives off a sound kind of like a buzz. And I'll do that again so that you can hear it. All right, so what happens is, you just take one wire from your battery over to your motor, and then another wire from the motor comes up here on top of the box, and a third wire goes from the battery here, so that when the wire touches the aluminum, it's like connecting the two wires together. And so that completes the circuit so that then you get a noise. So that way, if anybody were trying to break into your candy safe to get to your Reese's eggs, you would know it. So there is your basic candy alarm. There's a couple of different ways you can do it, a lot of different ways you can do the switches, but this is one of the easiest ways, and I wanted to put this together so that you could see one way that you could do it.